Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. It is July the 23rd, and welcome to the program. For all of you joining me live, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you folks over on YouTube and those on Rumble, those watching us on X. Make sure you guys like this video as you're going. If you have not subscribed over on the platforms that you listen, make sure you do. We really appreciate that. A little bit of housekeeping for those of you that are listening in the audio after, and if you're doing the replay, you're hearing some ads jumped in there. We've got a deal right now with Spotify. I don't know how it's going to work out. If it's really disruptive, I do want to hear about it. So make sure you guys let me know in the comments if it's problematic. I have absolutely no idea how much they're actually going to incentivize us financially, but they are running ads. I understand that there's going to be some before, probably two, and they're supposed to be short. There's supposed to be two somewhere in the middle, which I have a little bit of say in, and then there's two at the end. Again, if they start really ruining the flow of what we're doing here, I'll kick them out. It's not worth ruining your experience for it. But if it doesn't bother you and we can monetize the platform, then that's what I want to do. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. Today's program is going to be kind of interesting in so much as I have more to do with it than I normally would. I got a couple of little stories that we want to cover down on. The House Judiciary Committee has released findings that the FBI spied on Catholics, which is not news to those of you who pay attention to this program. In fact, it's probably the reason some of you know who I am. This is a story that I actually broke in February of 2023. So everything that is old is going to be new. Again, we're going to go back and roll the clocks back over 2 years. That's kind of strange. We're going to talk about the guy who was allowed to retire and didn't face any consequences. That's strange. And then we also had a court victory yesterday under which the X Corporation sued the federal government and for the first time publicly revealed that the lawsuit involving me and Garrett O'Boyle was in fact about me and Garrett O'Boyle, although they got his name wrong and they called him O'Doyle. So that's fairly strange. But we are going to go ahead and get into a little bit of that. I also want to talk about COVID, the long-term effects, and how so much of this ends up going back to that kind of crazy situation that we all lived through for years. And are there some long-term effects? It sounds like there's some studies that are coming out indicating, yes, that whether you got COVID shots, whether you actually contracted the virus and suffered the disease symptoms, or whether you just lived through it, everybody had a little bit of a takeaway from it, and it's probably negative on a net basis. We're also going to talk about Obama treason. Yesterday, I indicated to you that I believe that this is all professional wrestling, and it's not there, but there were some pretty wild statements made in the White House. Again, I'm doubling down on if you were going to do indictments, then you'd do indictments. The announcement was the result. That's my take. Happy to be wrong about that. I guess we'll see momentarily as we continue to watch what's happening. Before we get started with today's program, it might as well start from the beginning. What's the first thing that most of you do if you don't sleep in underwear or you don't change your underwear in the first thing in the morning? What's wrong with you people? The summer is here. So check out my friends over at Undertac. Summer's here and it begins with heat and humidity and discomfort. At least if you live in the state of Texas like I do, it is absolutely disgusting. That's why we've switched over here to Undertac. They are the leading edge of premium comfort and function. Forget about boxer briefs that you have that are cotton garbage. Undertac was built for Special Forces troops in brutal conditions. They use premium modal fabrics to wick away moisture at 50% higher rates than cotton. It's naturally antibacterial. They're going to give you a dry, cool, chafe-free wear, whether you're crushing a workout or you're doing your daily tasks like mowing the lawn in the state of Texas, which continues to grow at an undisgusting rate because of all the rains we've got here. They've got a little functional E&E pouch, which hides just below. Some of you actually asked me where to find the Steve Friend almond pouch. It is in behind the label. You can actually tuck something in there like a micro SD card, a tiny handcuff key, whatever keeps you ready, cash, or an almond if you are a marathon runner like my buddy Steve Friend. Undertac is more than just boxer briefs. You can also check out their American-made Battle Weave socks. I actually wear those when I do my workouts right now. They're very, very nice. 5 times stronger than merino. They're rugged. They have a soft, everyday t-shirt, hoodies, joggers. They even have women's underwear. You'll get 20% off site-wide with my name and the number 20. That's promo code Kyle20, Kyle20. undertac.com. Use the promo code Kyle20 for 20% off site-wide. That's like buy four, get one free of something. Check them out. Exceptional comfort guaranteed. Upgrade your gear, upgrade your mission, and make impact over at undertac.com. There's a link in the show description. All right, let's get into today's program. Like I said, it's gonna be a little bit me-focused. I don't generally like that, but I think we can't avoid it today. All right, so let's go into story number one. Again, everything that is old is new. Everything that we have already done is going to be re-revealed. And of course, you're going to see folks in the Judiciary Committee over the Senate saying, gosh, darn it, we've got Kash Patel, and so we're winning. We're winning so much. The FBI spied on Catholic priests for not divulging information on parishioners. Now, look, this is somewhat new in so much as they are giving another little detail, or what Dan Bongino might call a big nugget. Do we have a nugget?
He just gave up a big nugget.
It's a big nugget. The Richmond field office of the FBI spied on a priest. So this we haven't heard previously. The problem with this is that Catholic Vote, an organization that I was working with for a while, and Judicial Watch sued for the files and the information from the FBI while Biden was in charge, or while Biden was president. And the Chris Wray FBI denied them. They stonewalled them. We got hundreds of pages of documents and emails. And what you found out was not that the FBI looked in and said, holy crap, we're violating the First Amendment and we're going after people for their religion. That seems truly problematic. What they said is, oh crap, Kyle Seraphin has exposed what we're doing. This is a thermal exhaust port because there are millions of Catholics and there are tens of thousands of Catholics in the federal workforce, maybe hundreds of thousands. There's actually probably 10,000 Catholics that work for the FBI, and they might not like this. So we better do CYA as much as possible. And so they did. They didn't actually go looking for who is the person that wrote this. How do we go ahead and get this person tossed out? How do we re-educate our intel analysts that think it's acceptable? What they said was, how do we tramp down on the story? How do we clamp down on it? This is what the story looked like. For those of you that don't recall, there was only one person that had the courage to help me break this story. I brought it to Daily Wire, and they told me that they couldn't deputize me as a journalist, but I could give them my information. I chose not to do that. Same story with Fox. They didn't want to run it. I told them I'd write an op-ed. It wasn't really an opinion. It was actually the real story. And instead, only one person was willing to run it, and that was Tracy Beans over at Uncover DC. And we wrote the story that ended up launching like a half dozen or more investigations by the House and the Senate and the FBI's cover-up. The article was entitled, "The FBI Doubles Down on Christians and White Supremacy in 2023." And it was released on 2/8/2023 for those of you that are keeping score at home. Now on July 22nd, yesterday, as attributed to the Catholic News Agency, the Richmond office of the FBI spied on a priest because he refused to discuss private conversations he had with a parishioner who was converting to Catholicism. The House Judiciary Report pushed that out. According to the report, Richmond FBI investigated the priest's background, monitored his travel plans, looked into his credit card information, all of the things I told you they would do, because they can do it under the guise of national security. And the national security guise they did was DDoS. Now, interestingly enough, that, as far as I can tell, I'm going to have to go back and double check the math on this, but I'm fairly confident that Stephen Jensen, a guy that we've brought up as being the architect of what happened on January 6th, as far as going after them for being quote unquote domestic terrorists and getting all of that intel stuff that they had, Stephen Jensen, who now runs the Washington field office, who was in fact promoted by Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, would have been the person that would have been responsible for these intel cases. Again, an intelligence case is not the same as a criminal case. They don't have to allege criminality to open an intel case. They can say that there is a quote-unquote threat, and in this case, that threat was white supremacy. And that falls under the domestic terrorism operations section. Those are listed as 266, and I can't remember the alphanumeric that's on there. There's a 266 designation. Those are all of your sort of domestic terrorism, and one of them is racially motivated violent extremist, which is what they categorize Catholics as, and I guarantee that's what they opened this case under. The investigation allegedly launched after the priest became uncomfortable with an FBI agent's questions about a parishioner and said he would need to speak to the church's leadership and an attorney before answering questions. Quote, "There appeared to be no legitimate law enforcement purpose for investigating this priest, The report determined, kind of like I told you, there is no law enforcement purpose when it comes to intelligence investigations. The new information suggests the FBI's religious liberty abuses were more widespread than the FBI initially admitted and led the public to believe. So Jim Jordan is running out and crowing a win, even though he's never given me a phone call, even though the person who actually shared this with me and wanted to get it into the hands of the American public lost his job over this after many years of honorable service. A good man. That seems problematic. The FBI investigation into supposed radical traditionalist Catholic ties into the far-right white nationalist movement. It was revealed through a public leak of a Richmond memo. Of course, it wasn't a memo. It was an intelligence product, as was appropriately described, which is why I wrote the piece that I did in February. Although the FBI under former President Biden quickly disavowed the document after it came to light, said it was a single product. It was later revealed that there were several different FBI field offices that were involved, and so on and so forth. The thing that is truly crazy is the FBI agent indicated that the parishioner, and you could be a parishioner without being a confirmed Catholic, the parishioner was not subject to the protection of the confessional. This is an FBI agent saying this apparently to the priest because the person had not been baptized yet into the church. Now, the real danger here is our government does not get into the business of what is and what is not appropriate in the sphere of religion. If you've ever brought a Title VII case against a government or an employer, what you'll find is the default position of the government is that whatever you claim your religious beliefs are, that they are both sincere and they are genuine. And the reason is because the government doesn't want to get into the business of deciding what is and what is not a clean or pure or righteous religion, what is or is not sincere in your heart. They don't want to adjudicate that in the courts, because doing so would probably be a violation of the First Amendment. That's really worth knowing, because our FBI has no problem violating the First Amendment. What they have a problem with doing is looking like they're violating the First Amendment. I'm going to give you another example, which we just found out happened yesterday. This is Elon Musk tweeting over on his platform X, of which I am a member and I spend a fair amount of time on. It's a good place to hurt the feelings of government officials. He simply said, protecting your freedom of speech, and quoted the Global Government Affairs account, which is also owned by X. This was a press release they put out in longer form. You guys can find it over on my social media. This is what they said. In a victory for transparent and free speech, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has unanimously ruled in X's favor to limit the government's ability to issue gag orders. These gag orders prevent X from notifying the public when it receives government search warrants and subpoenas. Now, these are not FISAs. These are not national security letters. These are not things that should otherwise be listed under seal, at least not as I understand it. This is your information that the government will go out and look for. And this happened to me. And it happened to Garrett O'Boyle, who's still without pay and still technically an FBI employee, even though they haven't paid him, and now coming up on 1,030 days. Last year, X received subpoenas from the federal government, specifically that's the DOJ and the FBI. They were grand jury subpoenas from a criminal investigation into me and to Garrett, demanding the personal information of two former FBI agents, Kyle Seraphin and Garrett O'Boyle. They say Garrett O'Doyle, of course, because they got that wrong, unfortunately. O'Doyle does rule, but O'Boyle is superior to O'Doyle. This was accompanied by a gag order requiring X to keep the subpoena secret. Seraphin and O'Boyle were the whistleblowers who had disclosed to Congress that the FBI was improperly targeting certain politically disfavored groups. It goes on. I won't read all of it. I want you guys to know that this is the first time that X has publicly acknowledged it was us, even though we knew it was us. And I've shared with you that before. This is the first public announcement because they're able to actually unseal it. There's a huge chunk of this case that is actually still sealed or under seal, and it's all redacted. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to get that done. We're going to try to get that unsealed and see what sort of arguments were made. Some of the oral arguments were available, but they couldn't say things like who we were. And they had to leave out certain specifics, which did still indicate who it was. Now, this is kind of crazy stuff. Because what that lets you know, in addition to the fact that they were going after Catholics, that they were going after priests specifically and trying to break the seal of the confessional, which should be a very bright red line for an FBI agent. It also lets you know that they're willing to go after their own for exposing malfeasance. We were criminally investigated, and I don't have the details on it, but I would like to. And there's a decent chance if we unseal it, we might actually find out what they were trying to prove. The grand jury, as I understand it, was trying to prove that we were guilty of the same thing that they ended up charging J6ers with on the felony end. And that was 18 U.S.C. 1512, Section C. That was actually thrown out because of the Fisher decision. So in some ways, the Supreme Court decision that saved a bunch of J6ers may have also saved me from a lot of money in litigation against the federal government. We should not be in a big trusting state with our current FBI because they continued to fight against this. They continued to represent the government position, which is that the government wants to be able to keep things secret. By the way, Google got the same subpoena at the same time as X and just rolled over and gave it over. They did nothing of the sort. So if you want to go and look, and some of you have problems with Elon Musk, that's fine. When it comes to principle, you can at least respect that the man has apparently done the thing that he said he would do, which is fight on behalf of free speech. I'm a beneficiary of it. And now, because we've won this case, or because they have rather, we all win. Because X, if they were to go after you over there, would probably tell you that there was a subpoena into your things. Does that make sense? As far as we know, these criminal investigations are done, but it's worth noting that this all happened. And it's also worth noting that there's only one company in the big tech world that actually chose to fight against it. There's going to be more of this coming out. I'm sure they're going to continue to leak out there. I saw Jim Jordan already doing his sort of victory lap, saying that he told you about this before. Never once will they say my name associated with the fact that this story went public. It's all over the congressional record. They all had to cite this original article that we wrote with Tracy Beans. So good on us for doing that. Good on them for citing it then. Whether they like it or not, they can't take me out of the congressional record where we were noted. But today, inconvenient to be able to mention who actually brought this case forward. What's also inconvenient is that there was a guy named Stanley Meador. He was the FBI special agent in charge of the Richmond field office. He was promoted by Kash Patel in so much as his videos were retweeted or reposted by the current director. And he was able to quietly retire after 23 years and 1 month of service with the FBI, including his special agent in charge status right across from March of 2021 to June of 2025, 4 years and 4 months at Richmond. Directly in the middle of it was when this Richmond scandal broke out, when this document was released. And Meador did exactly what you'd expect an FBI special agent in charge to do: not take responsibility, not pay any consequences for it, and not hold anyone accountable. He was able to quietly retire, and he's going to move on, and I'm sure he'll find a very nice, high-paying job, and will also receive his $2 million worth of blood money as a pension, which will continue on until his time of natural death. So that's nice. We're all going to pay for his health care. We're all going to pay for this. Nothing ever gets solved when these people don't pay for it. And by the way, they never pay for it. So anybody who tells me that we've seen a reform or a change or the FBI is better because it's our FBI now, up until the month before last, this guy, 1 month ago, was still in charge of the office that did the thing that was a thermal exhaust port for Republicans to attack the FBI. It's worth knowing these things. Let's talk about some more kind of crime and punishment type stuff. This actually, I think, is sort of a nice turn. We've heard a lot of talk about immigration and the problems that immigration represents for the United States. I think it is the slow bleed that does kill us. It destroys the middle class. It destroys wages. It puts upward pressure on housing. It puts all kinds of other sort of issues that, it's a demand side increase because you put more people in the United States, and suddenly those people are going to put pressure on healthcare and housing and education and even like all of your normal goods that you might go buy. It's a problem. What I rarely hear is someone going after what I would call the demand side, not of our costs, but the demand side for illegal immigration. In fact, Donald Trump has been kind of soft on this, for whatever it's worth. This story coming out of CBS was something I saw yesterday, and I wanted to bring it up today. ICE says that it is going to, by the way, having the name of your organization be ICE and then referring to the top person at that organization as the ICE head. There's something really funny about this headline, because if you read it straight, it just says ICE head. It says agents will arrest anyone found in the U.S. illegally and crack down on employers of unauthorized workers. That's the real key, because that is in fact felonious activity. To employ someone who you know is here illegally, that's a felony. And that should be cracked down on. And it's very expensive, especially if you are doing it in bulk. This is the thing that I have not seen before, because these people would not be coming here if there was not a job opportunity. Yes, it turns out the federal government does give a lot of benefits to people that have no right to them. But being able to work is a big chunk of it because there's no permanent guarantee that you're going to have unlimited government resources. These corporations need to face some real legal problems when this comes down. They should. It sounds like they're going to actually do this. We'll read a little bit of the story. This is written sympathetically by Carmelo Montoya Galvez, someone I've seen at CBS writing about these matters in general and generally leans on the side of poor me, poor immigrants. In an exclusive interview with CBS News, the head of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement said his agents will arrest anyone they find in the country illegally, even if they lack a criminal record, also while cracking down on companies hiring unauthorized workers. Todd Lyons, he's the acting director of ICE, said his agency will prioritize the use of limited resources on arresting and deporting the worst of the worst, such as those in the U.S. unlawfully that have serious criminal histories, but also said non-criminals living in the United States without authorization will be taken into custody during the arrest operations. In other words, these are going to be sort of targets of opportunity, stating that sanctuary city policies that limit cooperation between ICE and local law enforcement are forcing his agents to go into the communities, and they're going to have to go find the people that they need to find. And if they happen to find people that are here illegally, they're also going to be done. Now, a little moment of reflection for us. There's only two ways that you can go and work in the United States. You either have to have false documents, either a fraudulent or a stolen identity, in order to appear as a legal worker, or the company has to willingly hire you without those documents, in which case they're the problem. So either the company is committing the felony, or you are committing a felony and representing yourself to be someone that you're not. You're going to have to lie on federal forms. You're going to have to steal someone's identity, social security number, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody who's been a victim of this knows exactly what a pain in the ass it is. Somebody is to blame. This is nice to see ICE actually stating that. And like I said, if they can shut down the demand side of these companies, make sure that they're all doing E-Verify, whether or not it works or not is another animal. At least they should be in the clear. If American companies are doing the right thing, then you're going to find out that the folks that are there, they have done something illegal. Most likely. They've stolen somebody's identity. They're using a social security number they're not authorized to work under. They've lied on federal forms. And that is, as far as I can tell, good enough. These guys say it doesn't even require that. But for all the folks out there that are, I had a great clip yesterday I heard, that's folks that have these like weird cognitive dissonant thoughts. A lady says, why are these ICE agents going after all these poor people that came to America? And the guy goes, just quick experiment for you. If you and I, she's some random white lady in Los Angeles, if you and I moved to Germany, could we just start working there and stay and move to Germany permanently? She goes, no. And he said, why not? She was like, well, you can't just break the law and do whatever you want in Germany. And he was like, didn't you just say that people could do that here? Because there's no thinking. It's just emotion. Again, if you go after the demand side of the companies requesting it, you go after the supply side of people coming over the border. Yeah, I heard a story yesterday, and I don't know if it's true or not, so I'm going to do a little bit of digging, but that between self-deportations and the sort of lower number of actual criminal deportations done by ICE and DHS and some of these federal operations, we're on track to push 4 million out. If you guys can find me a good source, I would love to see it in the comments below. I'm looking for a good source for self-deportations using the what used to be called CBP One app, that is now a self-deportation app. We reported on it when it happened, but I have not seen anybody reporting on it. And maybe it's just bad news for the left. And so my left-wing sources do not report that. But I'd like to see if there actually are trending numbers showing 4 million deportations for this year. My guess is not. But it was quoted to me yesterday, so I do want to do the due diligence on it. And again, if one of you has access to a source that says it, I'd love to see it in the comments below. We can do this as a sort of exchange. This is not always a conversation, but I'd love to have some of that if somebody else happened to see it, or if you were watching and like, aha, I feel really good about the deportation situation because of that. That'd be great. Let's go ahead and break over real quick while we're talking about things that can go wrong. Let's talk about our buddies over at My Patriot Supply. This is the Christmas in July sale and a preparedness bundle. Yeah, people are putting extra strain on, and it may not just be illegal aliens. It might be your neighbors and your friends and your loved ones. The website is mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle, mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. According to the Department of Energy, blackouts could increase by 10,000%. I think I said 1,000% yesterday. 10,000% over the next few years because of massive energy demand. There's AI data centers. There's all regular data centers. There's an aging and fragile power grid. It's difficult to keep up with some of this stuff. If you guys want to make sure that you are not without power even for a day, you might want to do something like get the Grid Doctor 3300. I have one sitting just outside the studio office, and it is powering everything you see on the screen. All the lights, all the cameras, all the screens. We use that because if I can't run this podcast, then we can't talk. And so I have unlimited uptime as long as we have the access to the sun. We've got two 400-watt solar panels, and I've also got the tie-in to the house power, so it works as what's called like a UPS, or a universal power supply. Right now, during the Christmas in July sale, you're going to get over $1,000 in free survival gear with your generator. That includes emergency food, water filtration, survival tools, and more. Yes, $1,000 in free gear. That's the best kind of gear to get. The stuff that's free 99. Head to mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Again, mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Check out the Christmas in July bundle. If you're looking at a screen and you have your phone, you can actually go and just hit that little QR code that you see next to my head, and you can check it out with that. It's really easy. You don't have to type anything in. All right. Consider them. There's a link in the show description. I am very pleased with the Grid Doctor so far. I can't say that it'll work forever. I've only had it for a few months, but it is pretty cool to know that even if we have storms, which we do here in Texas and all the other kind of things, like all of this stuff is universal, uninterrupted, whatever. You guys, look at it. My chat will always correct me when I use the wrong words. It's uninterrupted power supply. We have the same thing going, by the way, downstairs for the internet connections after some of the screwiness that we saw. I wonder if that's because of the feelings we hurt, starting with that Catholic memo and then the other nonsense. We're going to get into COVID stuff in a second, which I do think is relevant, but I want to start with this information, which again, it's going to tie into what was said yesterday. Trump has accused Obama of treason. It's a pretty bold claim. I don't know what to make of it. Neither do you, to be fair. This is what he said sitting in the Oval Office, and it's a pretty bold claim. You'd expect that if they were really going to investigate this, that they would have actually just announced the indictment when they actually had the probable cause to believe that this guy did this. I don't think Obama's in any danger. I don't think he slept any more difficult last night. He did release a statement saying essentially, I'll read it to you in a second. But here's Trump's sort of claim from the Oval Office.
If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one they look. He's guilty. It's not a question. You know, I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries. You've seen some pretty rough countries. This man has seen some pretty rough countries, but you've never seen anything like it. And we have all of the documents. And from what Tulsi told me, she's got thousands of additional documents coming. So President Obama, it was his concept, his idea, but he also got it from crooked Hillary Clinton. Crooked is a $3 bill.
Okay, treason is really specific. It's defined in the U.S. Code, the criminal code under 18 U.S.C. 2381. It defines treason. Whoever, owing allegiance to the United States, levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death or shall be in prison not less than 5 years and fined under this title not less than $10,000 and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. It looks like it was last updated in, let's see here, September of 1994. Looks like the last time they did any publishing. I'm guessing here from looking at the Cornell Law School definition. Unfortunately, this is a wartime charge. And the last person who was actually hammered with a treason charge was in 1952. It was a Japanese American that was like giving aid and comfort to the enemy in Japan while working at a prison camp. There was another person that was accused of it and maybe indicted for, but was killed in a drone strike by Obama, as far as I can tell, in 2009. It's not a thing that you can charge. So claiming that he's guilty of treason is a very soft definition of that word. It's problematic. in so much as our president needs to be really specific with words, particularly when talking about federal crimes. And this is not it. This all comes from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, releasing on Friday a slew of documents that she said implicate members of the Obama administration for quote unquote treasonous behavior during the 2016 election. In this case, I guess treason just means things we don't like, but the nature of the crime is going to be really specific. And Tulsi Gabbard's not a law enforcement officer, nor is she an attorney. So I don't know what that word is supposed to mean in their head, other than it sounds really good, and it makes for a hell of a headline. The claim confuses, okay, this is CNN doing their abbreviated version of this thing. The claim confuses the allegation that Russia interfered with the 2016 election with the idea that Russia actively tried to change the results by hacking into voting systems. So this is the new slant. There is a real weird slant that's going on, and it's pretty clear it's happening in the mainstream media right now. They're trying to rewrite history, assuming that there is no record of what they said previously. There were claims that Donald Trump was elected in 2016, in November of 2016, because the Russians hacked the voting systems and turned the vote count to something that was favorable to him. They've rolled that back over the last, let's say, 8 years and change, and tried to tell people something very, very specific. They tried to go from the voting machines were hacked and Donald Trump was installed, unlike what people think happened to Joe Biden, to there was an influence campaign, and that influence had some sort of tangible result and moved the needle to Donald Trump. The thing is this has been discussed ad nauseum for quite a while, and you cannot deny that these people actually stated that the election was specifically hacked. CNN is claiming otherwise. I saw a clip from that CNN Tonight Show, whatever it is, the roundtable that often has Scott Jennings on it, and they also made the claim, oh, we never said it was hacked. Here's a couple of minutes of them claiming that it was legitimately hacked.
Russia hacking the election to elect Trump is the end of our democracy. Votes were definitely affected. Russia hacked the election to tilt it to Mr. Trump.
The Russians definitively hacked the election.
Russia did hack the election.
No doubt. The Russians hacked the election.
Yes. Russia hacked the election.
Fact, Russia hacked the election.
President-elect Donald Trump still not sounding convinced that Russia hacked the election.
The president does not want to come to terms with the fact that the Russians hacked the election.
President Trump says he still wonders if the Russians hacked the election.
If you can get him to accept that Russia hacked the election, see if you can get him to accept who won the Civil War.
If he admits it, it casts a shadow on his victory over Hillary Clinton.
Russia hacked the election.
Russia hacked the election.
Russia hacked the election.
Russia hacked the election.
Let's be clear, Russia hacked the election.
Definitively, Russia hacked the election, and Russia is doing it again now.
Election-related cyber hacking.
Cyber hacking of U.S. elections. Cyber hacking of the election.
Russia was cyber hacking the election.
Russia was cyber hacking the election.
The CIA, the FBI, NSA.
All of these intelligence organizations.
17 intelligence agencies.
All conclude that Russia hacked the election.
If we find out that Donald Trump just theoretically was colluding with Russia while they were hacking the election, that is completely impeachable.
This dossier alleged a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian effort to hack the election.
The director of national intelligence, the head of the National Security Agency, the head of the FBI, all of these intelligence experts saying Russia hacked the election.
The FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, I mean, they've all said this. So to believe that that's wrong, you have to believe they're all involved in an elaborate conspiracy to get Donald Trump.
I mean, maybe they all are, so that all makes sense. The question is it something that you can actually indict? And can you prove it in a court of law? And can you prove it in a court of law where a jury is going to care? After years and years and years of hearing what you just heard, about 2/3 of those clips were from CNN itself, which claims in the story I just read, the claims confuse the allegation that Russia interfered in the 2016 election with the idea, you know, the one that they were espousing, that Russia actively tried to change results by hacking into voting machines. It's wildly misleading how the information was described by their source. So that's that. To believe that these people would lie is to believe your own eyes and ears when you listen to interviews that were given by these people, even at the time. This is a 2017 interview with Jim Comey. As we said, Kennedy's law number one is no matter who you put in the chair, you get Jim Comey in charge of the FBI. That's the reason why we're still fighting it. That's the reason why they're slow leaking stuff that makes them look good. Meanwhile, Jim Comey gave this interview to, what is this, ABC? The internet's forever, folks.
James Comey's explosive first interview since being fired by the president. The former FBI director describing in stunning and sometimes in graphic detail the conversations he says he had with the president, the private dinner, and the unverified dossier that Comey says the president was fixated on. In particular, the most salacious allegation contained in that dossier. Tonight, what we never heard from James Comey before, one-on-one with George Stephanopoulos.
As you headed into Trump Tower that day, were you nervous?
Yes.
FBI Director James Comey was with a group of intelligence agency heads briefing the president-elect and his top aides on how the Russians interfered in our election.
President-elect Trump's first question was to confirm that it had no impact on the election. The intelligence community does intelligence. The White House does PR and spin.
You also said you were struck by what they didn't ask.
Very much. No one, to my recollection, asked, so what's coming next from the Russians? How might we stop it? What's the future look like? It was all, what can we say about what they did and how it affects the election that we just had?
Comey says he then asked to meet alone with Trump to warn him about that now infamous Steele dossier. Unverified information on Trump's ties to Russia, including allegations of Trump's encounters with prostitutes in Moscow.
I'm about to meet with a person who doesn't know me. He's just been elected president of the United States by all accounts. And from my watching him during the campaign, could be volatile. And I'm about to talk to him about allegations that he was involved with prostitutes in Moscow and that the Russians taped it.
And also the fact that while I was the FBI director, we spied on them and tried to jam them up as Russian agents, that we gave a defensive briefing to his counterpart and his opponent in the election, but we investigated him and used FISA. So you can imagine how concerned I was, said Jim Comey, not on camera. How crazy is that stuff? Again, we can walk back and see this stuff and go, oh yeah, that's why. It's also kind of a good insight into Trump's sort of mindset when we look at what's going on with the Epstein situation and the fact that he doesn't want to discuss it. He wants to move on from it. He had the similar kind of things where he was really frustrated and he was smeared for years inappropriately by the people that run the government. I can understand that. I have a little bit of empathy for that. Here is the here's the woman that he ran against in 2019. This is a 2019 video. This is what we avoided. Again, once again, I should probably be reminded that this lady could be the president of the United States if things had gone differently. I should be more grateful, and I'm going to try. I'm doing my best. I don't love all the stuff that our Trump administration does. I really would like it if he listened to that clip that we just played, where the people were touting who the problems were. They actually told you. The CIA, the NSA, ODNI, all of these organizations, FBI. The intel agencies are the problem in this country. They continue to be the problem. They're the problem because they have their own agenda. And that agenda, they think, supersedes the ability of the president. They think that they're better informed. They've been there for longer. This is what a quote-unquote deep state is. This is the administrative state. This is permanent Washington bureaucrats thinking that what they know supersedes some elected sap who comes in for 4 or 8 years. And so why would we listen to this person? Why would we even care? And those same people, I guarantee you, turn around and vote Democrat and tell you at the same time out of the other side of their mouth that this is a democracy and not a constitutional republic. Here's this dim bulb that almost made it in. But for the grace of God and maybe a couple of millimeters on a bullet path, we would have had this lightning bolt explaining conflicts to kindergartners while she's being interviewed by a newspaper in Des Moines.
Let's back up and realize what happened. A historic adversary, Russia, trying to figure out how can I take away some of the strength of that place called the United States of America. Well, one of the strengths that they've got, and it's intangible almost, you can't really touch it, but it's strong. When they walk in the room, it's their strength, is that they are a democracy. imperfect though we may be, right? Flawed though we may be, it's part of our strength. How can we nip at that? Well, one of the greatest pillars of a democracy, especially ours, free and open elections. We are very proud of the fact we've not had any revolutions in recent history. It is through a peaceful transition of power through elections. Our election system, imperfect and flawed though it may be. So they decide to go at that. Well, let's get the American people going at each other to create division and a lack of confidence in this process. And they test out a bunch of subjects. And interestingly enough, the subject that gained the most amount of heat was race. And they had people going at each other. This is all in the, you read the reports and you will see that this is what happened. So, but the fact is Russia interfered.
Oh, that's the fact. That woman is an utter dipshit. I am like, how did she rise to the level of being in the vice presidency? How did she rise to the level of even being a senator? How was she elected to anything? Did anyone ever listen to her for more than a few seconds? The old white guy that was sitting there, that is the reporter for the Des Moines Register, is across the table from her, looking and thinking, this might be the dumbest human being that I've ever had to interview. And I've interviewed crackheads on the street. That's what he's thinking. And that's what I heard. I heard his thoughts so loudly you could as well. She thought that she was charismatic and brilliant in the same way when she described the Ukraine war. There was a country called Ukraine. And then there was a bigger country, a mini country, and it was near it, called Russia. And I have no concept of history, so I'm going to talk like you're in kindergarten, because that's when my brain stopped developing. Hands everywhere. Lots of gesticulation. Repeat the line. We did dodge a bullet, literally and figuratively, obviously. But holy crap. I mean, what on earth was that lady doing? And then there was somebody who was really skilled, who was in there before. She actually thought she was this. She actually probably looks in the mirror and thinks that she's the female version of Barack Obama, who was a talented communicator, who was absolutely full of shit a lot of times. I mean, I think most of these guys are. Trump included, by the way. People who are just full of it. You have to be a little bit full of it to want to go and be the president of the United States, right? You got to be a little bit nuts to take on the scrutiny, to take on the public eye, to take on all of the nasty things people are going to say about you. You got to kind of believe some things that are a little bit unrealistic about yourself. Because it would take an awful lot to say, yeah, I'm the guy to go out and be in charge of this nation of 340 million people. It's a pretty bold thing to do. This guy clearly had it. And he was talented as a politician. When he spoke, people listened. Here he is talking about the allegations. This is not new, folks. Donald Trump talking badly about Barack Obama and saying that he did things that needed to be, that he needed to be arrested for. It's not new. Here he is talking about it in 2020. This is October of 2020, just before the election that resulted in Joe Biden and that dim bulb, Kamala, being in office.
Trump keeps tweeting that the attorney general should indict you or indict Vice President Biden for spying on his campaign. The allegation is absurd. It's false. It's seemingly part of just his general rage at any discussion of Russian interference in the 2016 campaign.
The allegations are so absurd that even Republican-controlled committees, looking into it, have dismissed them. And, Attorney General Barr has dismissed them, but this is an example, I think, of a larger problem. Well, two larger problems, which don't get as much attention, understandably, when you've got high unemployment and a pandemic raging, because it doesn't touch people's day-to-day lives. But one of the central foundation stones of a democracy is the idea that you do not allow the politicization of the criminal justice system, the intelligence system, the military, right? That is stuff that you keep out of politics.
Wouldn't that be great? Because I would still be working for the FBI if that were the case. But that's not the case because we had the Biden administration come in and do exactly what Barack Obama said that we shouldn't do. Notice that he talked about COVID, the pandemic, and the unemployment that resulted from it, all the insanity that went along with all that. So that's all something we're going to end the show with because we're not going to let that go unannounced. And of course, the reason why I'm here in the first place was the politicization of those things, which shouldn't have been politicized. They should have been allegiant to the Constitution, which is outside the presidency. It's the continuity that's supposed to keep this country running without a real revolution, without any kind of violence. That's not where we're at, though. They were absolutely politicized. And how do I know that? Is because they went after Catholics as quote unquote white supremacists, racially motivated, violent extremists. And that flew. And those people who wrote those documents, they still work for today's FBI because we didn't solve that problem. I'm going to read you what Barack Obama's office issued because he still has an office of the former president. And he said this about Donald Trump's allegation. It's worth putting out there. Here it is. Quoted by CNN. Out of respect for the office of the presidency, I'm sure he has a ton, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response. Wow, how dignified of him. But these claims are outrageous enough to merit one. These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election, but did not successfully manipulate any votes. These findings were affirmed in a 2020 report issued by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee, led by then Chairman Marco Rubio. So that's it. It's been debunked. Again, I don't think we're going to see any significant movement on the indictments of a President Obama. I don't think it's happening. I think that we're just talking, but we are still adjudicating problems because those problems were not addressed. And some of those problems happened in 2016, going into 2017, the intelligence apparatus that went after Donald Trump. It's still there. A lot of those people still work there. And certainly the people that they promoted definitely still work there. And then the second piece of it is that we never really solved the problems after 2020 because we shut down our economy for a year, people. Let's go ahead and get into that in 1 second here. Before we do, let me just encourage you, if you are in the market, check out my friends over at Patriot Coolers. They are our longest sponsor. They are always with me wherever I go. When I go down and drive to the airport, they're with me. When I'm sitting here at the desk, they've got a mug full of coffee. PatriotCoolers.com is the website. The promo code is Kyle. It's just my name, Kyle. It'll save you 10% if you want to buy any of their coolers, if you want to buy their mugs, if you want to buy their tumblers, if you want to check into their hats. They've got good branding. They have a good mission. They give a good product at a price that's fair. And also some of their proceeds are going to always go to help veterans who have issues with mobility. All of that is good. They support the Kyle Seraphin Show. They have since the beginning. They're out of Houston, Texas. They ship quickly. Their stuff shows up. It's patriotic. It's well packed. It's well thought out. These are really good on every level. Yeah, I can't say enough things about it. 13 different bars on here. There are 50 stars on the bottom of all the mugs. It's just thoughtful stuff. It's things you're not going to find in some of the other stuff, the Stanleys, the Yetis, whatever else is out there that people are making. You could get something like this at Walmart, but you could also just order it from my friends over at Patriot Coolers. They make a great gift. They make a good summer thing. And if you don't have a functional cooler, check out their big stuff. It's the one that we use every day, including last night when I went to go pick up groceries from our HEB. I had the lady load the eggs and all the cold stuff into our 50-quart Patriot Cooler. They're good people. I'm going to give you guys kind of a warm-up going into this discussion about COVID shrinking your brain, there's some studies that are coming out, and they're all really, really damning. Some of them are about all of us, whether we were involved in getting a shot, whether we simply just got the disease, or whether we just lived through that time. I just want to put you back in the mindset of the absurdity that some of us saw in real time, and all of us should see now. This is Harrison Smith from InfoWars doing a little skit that I think is illuminating. So we're just going to start with a little bit of a comedy kind of walking into this.
Should I wear a mask? We know that masks don't really stop you from getting this type of infection. The science is pretty much settled on this. Masks don't work. Okay, so no mask. Actually, they're mandatory, and also we're shutting down everything. Wait, what? Yeah, it's called lockdown. I'm basically declaring martial law and saying that you can't leave your house or gather in large groups. How do you think you're going to get people to go along with this? Well, it's only for 2 weeks. It's going to last forever, isn't it? Maybe. And you're shutting everything down? Everything? Every restaurant, every store? Yep, absolutely everything. Everything's shut down. We're all in this together. So like even like Walmart and Target, no, they can stay open. Okay, well, what about like McDonald's or Taco Bell? Obviously McDonald's and Taco Bell can stay open. Okay, so the big chain stores can stay open, but if a small business tries to stay open, we will send a tank and point a rifle in their face and maybe send them to jail. But it's only for 2 weeks or years or whatever. I mean, won't that crash the economy? Oh yeah, 100% for sure. Okay, but this stops the virus. It does not, no. Okay, other than masks that don't work and lockdowns that don't work, is there anything else you suggest that we do? Oh, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm imposing plastic barriers and social distancing as well. Okay, so those work. No, of course not. It's ridiculous, just think about it. But we do encourage contact tracing, where you download our app to your phone and then use it to log everywhere you go and everything you do and everyone you interact with. It sounds like a precursor to vaccine passports. Wait, that's crazy. Hey, by the way, we sent a investigative team to figure out the origins of the virus. Oh, so you're investigating the lab? No. Okay, well, who are you sending to investigate? The guy who runs the lab. Yeah, this sounds suspicious. It's not. I mean, the whole thing sounds sketchy. Nothing you're saying really makes any sense. And it seems like the same people imposing the masks and lockdowns are the same people that are benefiting from it. And it seems like it's going to have way worse long-term effects than the virus itself. I mean, all of this seems arbitrary and expensive. Well, it's only until we get the vaccine, and actually it's going to be a wonderful, revolutionary new mRNA vaccine. So, thank God we have Bill Gates helping us with this. Bill Gates, isn't he the one who thinks the most pressing issue the Earth faces is overpopulation, and that the best way to reduce population is through vaccines? Didn't he give a TED Talk to that effect? No, shut up. He loves you.
Bill Gates loves you. How dare you? You can't say things like that. All of you guys understand. I'm watching the chat pop up. It was all about control. Yes, some of us saw that too. It was about compliance. That was clearly the case in the federal government. There was a concerted effort to tell you that if you thought otherwise, or if you even had any questions, that you were the problem, remember? And then we had the Biden administration come in after Trump. And what did they tell you? You're about to have a winter of death and serious illness. And you lost your jobs. A lot of you did. And you were told completely illogical things. I got kicked out of the VA. Do you guys know this? I got kicked out of the VA because I wouldn't put a mask on in 2022 in the summer in New Mexico, where nobody was wearing a mask properly inside. Like, look, I've worked in medical. I understand how fitment works for both the respirator types, the N95s. I know how they work when you just have a paper, sort of like whatever the heck those paper napkins were that we were wearing. I tried to go in and get my blood drawn because I wanted mental health counseling sessions with the VA to document some of the anxiety of losing my federal job, and they wouldn't let me into the building to get blood drawn because I needed blood drawn so that they could do a phone counseling session with me. That's how insane we got. And all of you guys have your own stories. I know you do. This is kind of interesting. Because of all that insanity, there's a story coming out from NBC News, no less. The pandemic aged our brains. Whether we got COVID or not, a study finds. Stress of lockdowns, fear, and social isolation appear to have left a mark on our brains. Experts say it may be possible to counteract these changes. So what is they saying? The brain aging may have sped up during the pandemic, says a new study, even for people who didn't get sick from COVID. Using brain scans from large database, British researchers have determined that during the pandemic years of 2021 and 2022, people's brains showed signs of aging, including shrinkage, according to a report recently published in Nature Communications. People who were infected with the virus also showed deficits in certain cognitive abilities, such as processing speed and mental flexibility. The aging effect was most pronounced in males and those from more socioeconomically deprived backgrounds, because COVID was racist. I'm reading between the lines here. It also highlights that the brain health is not shaped solely by illness, but by broader life experiences. The researchers found that a 5.5-month acceleration in aging was associated with the pandemic. On average, the differences in brain aging between men and women was small. It was about 2.5 months. We don't exactly know yet why, but this fits with other research suggesting that men have been more affected by certain types of stress or health challenges. That tends to make a lot of sense to those of us who understand how this plays. But more importantly, the things that I've been seeing, because I watch some alternative stuff out there, is that there was a real big question about what happened to people who actually did get this, or people who were injected with a mRNA vaccine that caused their body to produce a toxic protein and then fight that protein. There was a little back and forth that I had with Scott Adams the other day. Maybe you guys saw this. I got into a little discussion with Scott Adams, not on purpose. He was saying things, don't be a COVID Carl. And that is a person that he described in a little Dilbert cartoon as someone who makes their whole identity about not getting a vaccine shot. And I actually tend to agree with him. That's not a great way to do it. And you shouldn't basically make all of your judgment about that. I actually was engaging with one of the comments below. And what the question was you have to remember that the COVID Carl is a natural outgrowth of no COVID accountability. There were people that dehumanized you. They said that you couldn't be part of your family. They went out and made life-changing decisions for your careers, for your family members, for Christmases and for birthdays and celebrations. You were uninvited to weddings. You weren't allowed to go to funerals. You were not permitted to enjoy like normal family interactions. You were isolated on something that should have been a really, really private and not a big deal decision. Either you got the shot and you were protected or you weren't. That was the question we were all saying. The argument about deodorant was made one time. There was a great meme where a woman goes and smells a man and says, ew, you stink. That means my deodorant's not working. It's like either the shot worked and it protected you or it didn't. It seems like it didn't. So what the hell do I have to get it for? In any case, the COVID Carl that Scott Adams, the Dilbert creator, said was a guy that goes out and basically says, because you decided to get that shot, everything you do is now suspect and stupid. And I don't agree with that. There's plenty of people who got it for perfectly reasonable reasons. They were told by a doctor and they believe that doctor. Maybe they got it. They wanted to do something. They didn't say anybody else needed to do it. It was just a decision they made. I'm fine with that too. Make your own decisions, take your own responsibility, deal with your own consequences. That's all totally fine. It's the people that wanted to put folks in camps and have their kids taken away that I got a real problem with. And there were plenty of them. 1 in 5 Americans, according to those studies at the time, said that people should lose their kids and be rounded up and put in gulags if they wouldn't go do the thing that they all wanted them to do because of fear, because of all the things that were just described in that article. Some of us were not scared. In fact, some of us were pretty defiant. If you're like me and you're just pissed all the time about stupidity, you probably didn't have any aging of your brain because you were already like this. Maybe your brain just ages naturally like that. But I can tell you, there wasn't fear of COVID or anything else. But the only thing that I was concerned about was like my fellow man deciding to turn on me and my family. By the way, I always think that way. That's why I own a bunch of guns and why I own a bunch of ammo and why I trained and why I joined the military in the first place. I wanted to build up hard skills so that when stupidity came to my door, I was at least a somewhat barrier or at least a speed bump to stop it from coming after the people I love. That was me. Many of you probably have that same theory. This doctor, whose name is Shrunk Bhakdi, he is a Thai-German microbiologist, according to his bio out there. He's 78 years old. He's been studying corona stuff. Of course, he is hated and referred to as a source of misinformation. This is a study that I've seen pushed out, or at least a discussion of a study that's been pushed out by a number of places. Peter McCullough's Institute has done the same thing. I'm going to have him play it. Then I'm going to play a couple other people talking about it. His is the least emotional version, which I think is good. The other ones have like background music, so we're going to deal with that. But I do want you to consider that there are studies now emerging saying that the buildup of spike protein, which originated either from long-term viral exposure, which doesn't seem like it was normal, or that artificial reaction of people building it inside themselves. For me, by the way, that was the end goal. It's like autoimmune responses is when your body attacks your body. It recognizes itself as other. That's the most simple definition. You don't need a ton of time in a college level biology class to understand basically what autoimmune is. You could get that from watching House MD for whatever it's worth. And that was the thing that was kind of a shutdown for me. It's like, wait a minute, what? You're going to use my body to build something that my body is going to attack? How is that not an autoimmune response? It feels like it is. And then the question is where the hell does this stuff go? Can it be, excreted? Is it destroyed? Is there an easy way to handle it? This doctor, again, microbiologist, PhD, MD, his name is Shrunk Bhakdi. I'm going to play his little piece here, and then we're going to play a couple other things that do maybe explain some of the reactions that we're seeing in the world. I wonder if this is a bigger problem than people are willing to admit. Because I do see a lot more emotion than I've seen in a long time.
Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. I am no longer optimistic anymore. And the reason is very simple. Mm-hmm. The reason is because I'm afraid that these RNA vaccines, mod RNA vaccines, whatever you want to call them, have already done their job. And what their job has been, and this is incredible, was not even known to the planners because they didn't realize that what they were doing. But it is what I said years ago, that the vessels throughout the body are going to be attacked from top to toe. This is something that never happens in any disease, okay? Systemic, meaning the brain, the heart, the liver, everything can be attacked, the vessels. And the trouble is that it's turned out to be true. So this systemic vasculitis leads to destruction of brain cells, obviously. And that is what we are now experiencing. We're seeing, I'm afraid to say, billions of people whose brains are not working anymore, not as they should be. Mm-hmm. They are altered, and they do not have, they don't have the willpower anymore. They do not have the intelligence anymore to move things. And so the only chance we have is to stop this mod RNA crime, because this crime is going to destroy us.
I'm going to play you a little bit more, again, a little bit faster paced version. He speaks very deliberately, but the issue being vasculitis, being the difficulty in moving oxygen to all the places that it needs to go, whether it be in your end organ perfusion, whether it's in your brain. This can cause all kinds of wild effects. And that makes perfect sense. And if you start building up a protein mass that is toxic or has, some sort of inflammatory properties, the things they're saying actually make plenty of sense when you listen to it. Just you start going like, okay, well, how widespread is it? And how would you study that? You'd study that by looking at a control group, and then you'd look, which a lot of people thought they were the control group when they had the vaccine mandates come out. You'd study a control group, and then you'd study people who got some novel treatment, one variable change. And then you do a big enough group of them to try to figure out whether or not people were having different mental experiences. Were they more anxious? Were they more stressed? Were they more depressed? Did they have more instances of mental illness, things like bipolar? Did the schizophrenia? Did these things occur at a higher rate than previously is? And those things are pretty well studied. So we're going to play a little bit of that. This is a guy who works for Peter McCullough's foundation. What's it called? I think it's called one second here. It's called the McCullough Foundation. Yeah, I had it right. His name is Nicholas Hulscher. He's a master of public health. He's an epidemiologist. He's an administrator over there, and he tends to do like a fair number of these interviews. This stuff comes from Vigilant Fox, if I'm seeing it correctly. And of course, it has some background music. But bear with me, the things he's saying, and he's quite almost like flat affect autistic when he speaks about this. But it's worth listening to this information and seeing what you think. And then again, there's studies that are coming out over and over again. Now people are starting to study this because they're able to, they're allowed to, and the results are not good. And they're actually pretty sad for most of us that have people we love that went out and got these shots. Doesn't mean that they're going to be affected. It just means that the possibility of it happening seems a lot higher based on these peer-reviewed studies.
Yes, we have multiple studies now indicating severe behavioral changes in those who receive mRNA shots. And that's because now a study by Ota and colleagues that found the mRNA, vaccine mRNA, and spike protein was being produced in cerebral arteries of stroke patients. We know the mRNA shot's based on the second largest COVID vaccine safety study ever conducted with 85 million people in it. They found 200% increased risk of stroke after dose 2 of mRNA shots. So we do know it goes to the brain, causes brain damage, neuronal destruction, and that is reflective onto neuropsychiatric conditions. That was found now in a study by Dr. James Thorpe and colleagues. They actually identified 86 neuropsychiatric safety signals for these COVID shots, including homicide, homicidal tendencies, psychosis, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, cognitive impairment, violent behavior. All of this stuff was found to be in far exceedance of what was reported with the flu vaccinations. And so this is so concerning. And this also corroborates multiple other studies. One out of Korea that found increased Alzheimer's risks, increased cognitive impairment risks, and also another study I believe also out of Korea, found massive increased risks of depression, sleep disorders, and anxiety from these injections.
All right, I can only handle so much of that music, and I apologize that that's on the background. If I could screen it out, I would. I've got another one, which also has a little bit of background music, but it's about the same information. Again, the multiple people reporting, they're looking at the same studies here. These studies are starting to be sort of congealed together, showing depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, etc. All those things make people more irritable, make them more likely to be angry. I'm seeing more people with quick fuses, and I don't know if it's because of such a contentious political environment or whether people are actually physically more inclined to be like that. It's worth knowing that sometimes it's not just the environment. There can be some internal structures. And look, you guys know it in your own life. You go get a bad night's sleep for a couple days in a row. I'll tell you this, I came out of survival school when I was in the Air Force, having bad sleep and bad nutrition and kind of being abused a little bit. We've all been abused a little bit by our government, or at least we look around and think that's a possibility at a height, especially when you see stories like we led with here. Freaking FBI agents trying to get Catholic priests to give up the stuff in your confessional. That's pretty abusive to know that your government's out there doing that. It can make you really edgy. I may or may not have choked out a young soldier when I was at airborne school because he got in my face, and it was a totally outsized reaction that I would normally not have. So just be aware, there may be some physiological changes that are actually happening on there. Anyway, it's a good time to be patient with ourselves. It's a really good time to be adding good boundaries and discipline to our children. I'll play one more little video here, and then we'll get out of here with a palate cleanse, which reminds us that it's not all bad, and there are some things out there that we can always do. There are things within our control. This is not, probably.
As art, scientists are now confirming what many have long suspected. The COVID shots don't just impact your immune system, they can damage your brain and devastate mental health. And the evidence is overwhelming. A recent wave of studies have revealed shocking increases in ischemic strokes, up 44%, hemorrhagic strokes, up 50%. Transient ischemic strokes or mini strokes up 67%. Myasthenia gravis, a debilitating autoimmune condition, up over 71%. Alzheimer's up 22%. Cognitive impairment up nearly 138%. Depression up over 68%. Anxiety disorders up nearly 44%. And sleep disorders up over 93%. All linked to one thing: toxic spike protein accumulation and persistence in the brain. This isn't a conspiracy theory. These are documented, peer-reviewed research published studies by documented experts, including by epidemiologist Nicholas Holscher, who says using mRNA to hijack cells in various organ systems to produce a highly toxic spike protein that persists in the body for months or even years was one of the worst ideas in medical history.
The thing that I always land on, because we were actually warned about a lot of this stuff, whether we've had fiction warning us about AI as a danger going back long before I was born. And one of the things that we actually probably should have heeded, it was in the book, but it was in the movie too, the story of the character of Ian Malcolm in the book and then the movie later, Jurassic Park. He said the scientists that were doing what they were doing, of course, they were talking about tampering with genetic material, which is not that far-fetched from what we're talking about here. They were trying to bring back dinosaurs, but even just screwing around with the basic building blocks of our life structure. The scientists were so concerned about whether they could that they forgot to consider whether they should. And so those ethical considerations and what the downstream effects are, particularly in something called Operation Warp Speed, was that not the number one thing that people went like, you know what? Pass on all that. How about you catch me on the version 3.0? How about you don't catch me on the first time when you try to figure out the kinks and how many bugs are going to be in this system? Really scary stuff. It's always bothered me. It bothered me at the time. It bothered me the way they have to develop this stuff, the way that they have to go out there. They can't put it in live tissue, so they go out there and simulate live tissue. I had all kinds of objections to this. And the fact that that was used to sort the good and the bad people. The goats and the lambs, the goats and the sheep. Why was that? You know, I think all this stuff needs to still be adjudicated. We're not done with this, and we're not going to be done with it for a very long time because it was so detrimental to our national psyche, to our cohesion in family units, our fundamental trust of institutions, and the betrayal that a lot of us felt from it. That is an ongoing problem, and it's every bit as ongoing as our intelligence agencies going up against a presidential candidate and the politicization of our government structures against, politicians. How funny is it that The people who broke the pane of glass and arrested a president are the same ones that are crying about it. Like, I don't think they're going to do it again. I just don't think that Trump is going to have the goods. I don't think that Obama is sleeping any more difficult. I don't think that the Biden folks are scared that they're going to, end up in a prison cell. But we've already broken that banana republic piece because they already raided Mar-a-Lago. And that was crazy. That was a crazy thing to do. Anybody who's listened to me since the beginning the first interview I ever gave in public, I said it was one of my proudest moments, that the FBI felt like I was unfit to be part of what they did. I was unfit because I said no to their overall compliance purge, and they removed me before they went after and kicked down the door or went and did a, non-consensual search of a former president's residence. Who knew that he was going to be the president again? Again, it could have been that dim-witted bulb who we heard talking in Des Moines. That's what I got for today. Let's do something fun. Let's see if we can find some things. How about an argument for trad dads? An argument that says there is a way to do it. Before we get there, rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin is one of the video platforms where we have our best chat. It's the biggest chat. If you guys want to join us there, please do. Make sure you've liked the video before you leave. It boosts us in the ratings and it puts us on the leaderboard. Same story over on YouTube. Guys, subscribe over there at youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. It's probably the best video platform. They just have the best infrastructure for whatever it's worth. You don't have to love it, but it is the best. And then Locals is where we have our behind the scenes community where we share some information and you guys get things like our Sunday sit down a day early. Spotify is KyleSeraphinShow.com if you guys want to send it to somebody. Easy day. And remember, the Spotify stuff is now going to have some mid-roll ads and one before and after. So bear with me and give me a comment if they really start bugging you. Let's do the value of the trad dad given from an unlikely and somewhat kind of weak guy. This is Bill Maher, who I guess he's like a classical liberal. At least he can appreciate that men being men is a good thing. And then we'll end with some dad jokes.
This is why the traditional dad, the trad dad, needs to make a comeback. Not all the way back to the 1950s psychopath who never said he loved you and hit you with a belt, no. But just back to the dad who believes that because I said so is a perfectly legitimate answer to any question a child may have. Just back to the dad who would never say anything as stupid as, my kid is my hero, or where do you want to eat dinner? Or one more story, and then we really have to start thinking about going to bed, okay? Trad dads don't negotiate. They say, you will apologize to your mother. Don't make me turn this car around. Some things just happen because life is unfair. Clean your room, be quiet, the adults are talking, and it's not all about you. Mostly, a trad dad knows he's your parent, not your friend. He isn't your emotional support animal. He's simply a guy who understands the job to raise an adult who can survive in the wild.
Yeah, and lastly, the trad dad's job is that if there's evil or danger out there in the world, it's his job to get in between it and his family, which is what hopefully those of you who are out there that are dads are doing. You understand? That's the ask. We had a funny little story at our dinner table last night. My daughter used to have an irrational fear of owls. I don't know why. I have no idea where she even saw owls, but she was concerned that a red-eyed, large-winged creature would come and snatch her up in the night. And I told her in no uncertain terms when she was probably 2.5 years old, and she was, just verbal, but not speaking a whole lot, explained to me her fear. And I told her that if an owl ever came into our house and came after her, that I would tear its effing wings off. I don't think I said the effing part, but I let her know that I would destroy things that would come after her. That's your job as a dad. That's what men's job is to tame the world so that the people that are small can flourish. Yeah, you don't have to be their friends. Let's do some dad jokes because I think that's good too.
I've been saying mucho to my Mexican friends lately.
This is good.
It means a lot to them.
I lost 20% of my couch. Ouch.
A man tried to sell me a coffin yesterday. He said, that's the last thing I need.
Go out there and love your dads. Go out there and look out for your families if you are one. And God bless all of you. Thanks for listening to the show. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. Who knows what Thursday will bring us. It's been a weird week already, and it's been a short one for me. So go out there and have a fantastic day. God bless you. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.